I'm just going to jump right into this, and saying as the best way to debunk a theory is to challenge the evidence, that's where I'll start. I should probably first explain that the theory I'm debunking is that innovation doesn't sell, and that it's gamers that are to blame for this because of their buying habits. Number one, and probably the most important point, in the video we were asked to
look at the GameCube, which is perhaps the greatest system for innovation.
Simply put, the GameCube as a console had nothing to offer in innovation. It didn't even have the DVD player that the PlayStation 2 had, and as a result, well, to say that the GameCube lost the console battle to PlayStation 2 would be an understatement. Everyone knows the most innovative console from Nintendo was the Wii, and look how well that did for them. The second reason this is bad evidence is that it contradicts something said later on in the video. Here it says that Resident Evil 4 sold poorly, whereas later on you can see that Resident Evil 4 actually outsold the previous Resident Evil games. You could say that Resident Evil 4 sold better because of innovation, but really it just changed genre, and everyone knows that the action genre sells more. But either way, it certainly wasn't more of the same. It was a drastic change, yet it still sold so much better, and was a huge success for Capcom in that respect. Finally, using this theory's logic, gamers only buy games that are more of the same. Well, the GameCube was the best console for remakes, and if you wanted more of the same, then the GameCube was the console to get. The GameCube had a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 and Resident Evil 1, and even a Master Quest version of Ocarina of Time, so there's plenty of more of the same type games, which goes against the theory that gamers just want more of the same. Actually, I have another thing to say about the GameCube. Towards the end of the summary in the GameCube section, we are told that Smash Bros and Mario Kart were the only two games to sell, and then the screenshot scrolls up on the screen, and you can clearly see that number 4 on the list is Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. Now, a little bit later on, the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is used as an example of how innovative a game can be and how highly praised it can be, but still have very few sales. Well, the reason behind that is quite obvious. The GameCube only sold 22 million. So any sales after that are going to be relative to the console itself. So the example given is, how can Mario Party 8 sell 8 million and games like Legend of Zelda Wind Waker only sell 3 million? Well, it's quite simply because it had the handicap of being only on the GameCube, which impeded the sales. It was nothing to do with innovation, it was just simply there wasn't enough people to buy the game. I mean, what do you expect the PlayStation 2 users to buy this great game but they can't play it? While I'm talking about the graphs, there's a somewhat misleading Mario bar chart which tries to make it seem as though only the 2D Mario games sell. But again, this is completely relative to the respective consoles. For example, going back to my bar chart, you can see that the Nintendo 64 sold 33 million units, whereas the NES and the Super NES sold 49 million and 62 million. When I bring up a list of the best-selling Nintendo 64 games, Super Mario's right at the top of the list. So relatively speaking, it sold the best for the whole console. This is especially important because Super Mario 64 was the first 3D Mario. Now, if that's not innovation in gaming, I don't know what is. There's no way you can say this is more of the same, and there's also no way you can say that it didn't sell well because it was the best selling game for the console. I don't like anyone describing what's happening with the Resident Evil series inaccurately, and I know I touched on this a little bit earlier with Resident Evil 4, but one of the bar charts quickly pops up on screen in the video, And the commentator actually says,
"Sales have been staying steady."
What I really love about the graph is that it shows that sales aren't staying steady. Resident Evil 6 didn't sell nearly enough, which was a big disappointment for Capcom. There's even talk of Capcom switching back to survival horror. So the more of the same approach that Capcom's delivered with Resident Evil 6, being more like Resident Evil 5 and 4, the golden formula described in this video didn't pay off. People clearly don't want more of the same, and they do want Resident Evil to do something innovative. The final graph I want to talk about is the Madden graph. This is for the game Madden, and what the commentator of the video is illustrating is that it has sold quite steadily. There's some peaks and some dips, but over the years, even though that Madden has just been a game that is an example of more of the same, there probably wasn't ever any big innovation with Madden. It's just the same thing each year. But what I really love about this chart is that it shows that right as soon as the Sega console drops off the bar chart, it starts to go down a little. Then once the Microsoft console comes into play, the graph starts going up. This is nothing more than inflation. Madden is selling more not because gamers want more of the same, but because the market is inflating and new consoles are being added. You can actually see it in the graph, which is, I don't know how they didn't come to that conclusion themselves. Oh wait, maybe it's selling more because there are more gamers and more availability. I mean, who knows? There's all sorts of reasons. It could be there's more marketing for the game. You can't pin it to one thing. And this is what I think the most important point of this video is.
Any way you look at it, the data is overwhelming.
The data is overwhelming. So overwhelming, in fact, that you can't look at one sales bar chart and explain it by one overriding factor. Especially something as abstract as the buying habits of every gamer in the world. At this point, I'd like to make reference to the statement, correlation does not imply causation. At the minute in gaming, there is a slump in innovation and sales are increasing, but that doesn't mean that the sales are increasing because there is a lack of innovation. Using that logic, the diagnosis of autism could be linked to organic food sales, or even eating chicken could make you go to the moon. And as for gamers being somehow responsible for what games are being made, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Henry Ford. Among other things, this quote represents that consumers don't always know what they want, but it's up to the job of the designer or the developer to show the consumer what they want.